Good evening, dear students. Welcome to the English Canvas. Today, we are going to explore the life, works, and distinctive literary style of one of the most influential writers of the 20th century, George Orwell. His real name was Eric Arthur Blair, but he is better known by his pen name, George Orwell, a name that has become synonymous with truth, conscience, and resistance against tyranny. So he was born on 25th June 1903 in Motihari, Bihar, India. Yes, he was Indian. So he was an Indian where his father, Richard Wellesley Blair, worked in the Indian Civil Services. His mother, Ida Mabel, took him to England when he was just a year old. He was educated at Eton College, one of the most prestigious schools in England, where he developed a sharp intellect and independent thinking. However, due to financial constraints, he could not go to university. In 1922, he joined the Indian Imperial Police in Burma, which is now Myanmar, where he served for 5 years. His experiences there deeply affected him. He became disillusioned with imperialism and colonial oppression, which is a theme that later appeared prominently in his writings. So, after returning to England in 1927, in 1922, he joined Imperial Police, Indian Imperial Police in Burma, which is now Myanmar. And after 5 years, in 1927, he returned to England. Orwell decided to become a writer. He lived a life of poverty to understand the struggles of the working class. So, this phase inspired his early works like Down and Out in Paris and London. Down and Out in Paris and London. That novel, this is his his debut novel, which was published in 1933. This is a semi autobiographical work depicting life among the poor and marginalized in two great cities. And the second early work is Burmese Days, which was published in 1934. This is a novel which exposes the corruption and hypocrisy of British colonial rule in Burma. Both works reflects Orwell's growing concern for social justice, truth, and human dignity. Now let us look at some of Orwell's most significant literary contributions, his major works. The first is Animal Farms, which was published in 1945. This is a political allegory that uses farm animals to present the events of the Russian Revolution and the rise of Stalinism. The pigs, especially Napoleon and Snowball, symbolize totalitarian leaders. Orwell demonstrates how power corrupts and how revolutionary ideals are betrayed. In this novel, there is a famous line: all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. This line remains a timeless commentary on political hypocrisy. The second novel is 1984, which is in our syllabus as well. And this novel, 1984, was published in 1949. This is Orwell's masterpiece, a dystopian novel that portrays a world under total surveillance and authoritarian control by a regime led by Big Brother. So this novel is very important. This is considered as this is considered as Orwell's masterpiece. This novel is in a syllabus. So the novel introduces concepts like doublethink, thought crime, and the Ministry of Truth, which have entered everyday language. So this novel warns against the danger of propaganda, censorship, and loss of individuality. It was written shortly before his death. It reflects Orwell's deep fear of a world where truth itself becomes a tool of oppression. The next major work is Homage to Catalonia. It was published in 1938. It's a non-fictional account of Orwell's experience fighting in the Spanish Civil War. It presents Orwell's disillusionment with both fascism and Stalinist communism. The work marks Orwell's evolution into a democratic socialist, one who believed in equality and justice without totalitarianism. The last major work is A Road to Winged Empire. It was published in 1937. So it's an exploration of the miserable conditions of the British working class during the Great Depression. It combines vivid reportage with sharp political commentary showing Orwell's sympathy for the poor and his critique for industrial society. So let's talk about his literary style. So Orwell's style is one of the clearest and most distinctive in English literature. So let's highlight to its main characteristics. The first is clarity and simplicity. So Orwell believed that writing should be as clear as a window pane. His prose avoids unnecessary ornamentation or complex metaphors. For example, the simple yet powerful sentences in Animal Farm and in 1984. The second literary style is honesty and precision. So he was deeply concerned about the corruption of language and politics. In his essays, Politics and English Language, which was published in 1946, Orwell warns that vague and dishonest language can manipulate thought. Thus, he always aimed for moral and linguistic precision. The third characteristic is satirical tone. So Orwell's satire is sharp but never cruel. He exposes hypocrisy and moral decay, especially in political systems, with irony and wit. The fourth is political consciousness. So every line Orwell wrote, as he himself admitted, was against totalitarianism and for the democratic socialism. His work blend political awareness with deep human sympathy, right? And the fifth is symbolism and allegory. So in Animal Farms, animal symbolizes political figures, and in the novel 1984, the entire world functions as an allegory of modern tyranny. So Orwell symbols are simple yet powerful, easy to grasp but profoundly meaningful, right? So Orwell's philosophy and vision is very important to understand. We need to understand this. So Orwell's work are not just about politics; they are about human truth. He believed in dignity. He believed in the dignity of the individual and the freedom. He believed in the freedom of thought and the necessity of truth in public life. His central message can be summed up as in a time of deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. So, even today, Orwell's warnings about propaganda, surveillance, and language manipulation are alarmingly relevant in our digital and political world, right? So, George Orwell died of tuberculosis on January uh, 21st January in 1950 at the age of 46. He was born on 25th June 1903 and was died at 21st January 1950. So though his life was short, he was died at the age of 46 only. So his life was very short, but his influence has been immense. His name itself has given rise to the adjective Orwellian. इनका जो नाम है ना ऑरवेल, इसी से ही एक एडजेक्टिव बना है ऑरवेलियन. सो हिज नेम इटसेल्फ हैज़ गिवन राइज टू द एडजेक्टिव ऑरवेलियन. मतलब ऑरवेलियन एक एडजेक्टिव होता है जो इनके नाम से ही मतलब कनेक्ट हो गया. सो डिस्क्राइबिंग एनी सिचुएशन where truth is twisted and freedom is crushed. Writers, journalists, thinkers across the world continue to regard George Orwell as a moral compass, reminding us that literature has the power to defend truth and consciousness. So Orwell was more than a novelist. He was a truth teller, a moral critique, and a champion of human freedom. Through Animal Farm in 1984, he exposed the danger of absolute power. Through his essays and journalism, he fought against the misuse of language and distortion of truth. Even decades after his death, Orwell's voice continues to remind us of our duty to remain awake, aware, and honest in the face of lies. Right? Now we'll discuss the text 1984, the novel which is in our syllabus. So, George Orwell's 1984 is not only one of the greatest dystopian novels of 20th century but also one of the most prophetic works ever written about politics, truth, and the human condition. So, 1984 by George Orwell is one of the most influential novels in modern English literature. It was written in 1948. 1948 में नॉवेल लिखी गई 1984. This is so amazing, So 1984 envisions a world dominated by power, totalitarian power, propaganda, and surveillance. Orwell wrote the novel as a warning against the dangers of unchecked political authority, inspired by the rise of dictatorships such as Stalin's Soviet Union and Hitler's Nazi Germany. Through his grim imagination, Orwell presents a chilling future where truth is manipulated, individuality is destroyed, and freedom is only an illusion. So let's talk about the summary, the plot summary. So the novel is set up in Airstrip 1, formerly known as Great Britain, which is now a province of a vast empire called Oceania. Oceania is constantly at war, um, and the government, led by the mysterious figure Big Brother, exercises the total control over every aspect of life through the party. So the protagonist is Whitson Smith. Whitson Smith is the protagonist of the novel. He works at the Ministry of Truth, where his job is to rewrite historical records to match the party's current version of events. He secretly hates the party and dreams of the rebellion. So, Whitson begins an illegal love affair with Julia. He begins an illegal love affair with Julia, a young woman who shares his hatred of the regime. The relationship becomes a small act of defiance against a government that forbids individual emotions and personal connections. So they rent a small room above a shop, believing it to be a private refugee. However, they are soon betrayed by O'Brien, a member of the inner party whom Winston mistakenly believes to be a fellow rebel. So Winston and Julia are arrested by the Thought Police and taken to the Ministry of Love, where they are tortured and brainwashed. So O'Brien reveals that he was loyal to the party all along. So through psychological and physical torture, Winston is forced to abandon his love for Julia and accept party's version of reality. Even the idea that 2 plus 2 is 5, if the party says so. So, in the novel's devastating conclusion, Winston is completely broken. He is released back into society, but his mind and spirit have been crushed. So, in the final line, Orwell writes, he loved Big Brother. So, this chilling ending signifies the total triumph of totalitarian control over truth, individuality, and human emotion, right? So, in the novel, in part 1, World of the Oceania, so the protagonist Winston Smith is a 39-year-old man living in a dilapidated apartment building called Victory Mansion. He works at the Ministry of Truth, where his job is to alter historical records so that party's version of events always appear correct. For example, if the party changes alliances in war, so Winston must revise past newspapers to make it look as if the alliance had always been that way. So Winston secretly despises the party and the dreams of rebellion. He begins writing in a secret diary an act of considered thought crime, punishable by death. In his diary, he writes the dangerous phrase, "Down with Big Brother." So that this diary symbolizes Winston's first act of intellectual rebellion, his attempts to preserve personal truth in a world built on lies. So everywhere, telescreens monitor citizens, recording both sound and image. The thought police track down anyone showing sign of disloyalty. Children are indoctrinated to spy on their parents. So the society is divided into three classes: the inner party, the ruling elite, 2%, only 2% of the population; outer party, bureaucrats like Winston, which is about 13% of the population, and the rest, 85% of the population, are proles, the working masses kept uneducated and distracted. So Winston feels a strange connection with an inner party member named O'Brien, suspecting him to be secretly opposed to the regime. He also notices a dark haired woman, um, Julia, whom he initially believes to be a spy. So, in part two, there's love and rebellion betrayal. So, Winston and Julia's relationship got started. One day, Julia slips Winston a note that says, "I love you." So, they secretly begin a passionate affair, meeting in hidden places, first in the countryside, later in a rented room above Mr. Charrington's antique shop in the Prole district. And the relationship is both emotional and political rebellion. In a society where even physical desire is regulated by the party, love becomes an act of defiance. So Julia is more practical than Winston. She doesn't care about ideology, and she simply hates control. So Winston, on the other hand, longs for truth and freedom. The two find comfort in their brief moments of intimacy, believing that human spirit can survive oppression. So Winston's suspicion about O'Brien deepens when O'Brien invites him to his luxurious apartment. There, O'Brien appears to be a part of a secret resistance movement called the Brotherhood, supposedly led by the Emmanuel Goldstein, the party's most hated enemy. So O'Brien gives Winston a copy of Goldstein's book, The Theory and Practice of Oligarchical collectivism, which explains the party's methods of control. So, perpetual war to maintain fear and obedience, the manipulation of truth and history, and the destruction of language and thought. So, Winston begins to believe that the rebellion is truly possible. So, one night, while Winston and Julia are in their rented room, a hidden telescreen behind a picture frame suddenly speaks. And it speaks. They are arrested by the thought police led by Mr. Charrington, who turns out to be an undercover agent. So this marks the collapse of Winston's illusion of freedom. Even love and rebellion were under surveillance all along. So in part 3, which describe the torture, re-education and submission. So Winston is taken to the Ministry of Love, ironically named it is actually. So where he is imprisoned, starved and tortured. He meets O'Brien again, but this time as his tormentor, not his ally. So O'Brien reveals that the purpose of the party is power for its own sake. And he said, "We are not interested in the good of others, we are interested solely in power." He tells Winston that the party's control is absolute over the past by rewriting history, over the present by suppressing dissent, and over the future by controlling children and education. So O'Brien tortures Winston physically and psychologically until Winston begins to doubt his own memory and perception. When Winston insists that objective truth exists, that 2 plus 2 make 4, and uh, O'Brien holds up 4 fingers and tortures him until he says it's 5. So this is the core of Orwell's warning: when power can define truth, freedom ceases to exist. So Winston's final test comes in room number 0, room number 101, where every prisoner faces their worst fear. For Winston, it's rats. Winston को ना rat से डर लगता है. So O'Brien threatens to unleash them on him, and in sheer terror, Winston screams, "Do it, do it to Julia, not me." So with this betrayal, Winston's spirit is completely broken, and he has lost his capacity for love, loyalty, and independent thought. So after his re-education, Winston is released and he spends his days drinking in a cafe, playing chess and watching telescreen broadcast. He has become a hollow man, which is who is a hollow man who is obedient, emotionless, and thoughtless. In the final scene, when Winston hears the news of military victory of Oceania, he feels joy and gratitude. And he said, there's a line in the novel, he loved Big Brother. So this chilling ending signifies that the complete triumph of the party, not through the physical domination alone, but through the destruction of human mind and soul. Right? Now, let's discuss the characters in brief. So, the protagonist of the novel is Winston Smith. He is the protagonist and the tragic hero. He is thoughtful, introspective man who works for the Ministry of Truth. His rebellion is both political and deeply human. He wants truth, love, and memory in a world that forbids them. Ultimately, he is defeated and reprogrammed to love Big Brother. He is the symbol of the defeated individual under totalitarian rule. Julia, she is young, practical woman who works in the fiction department. She rebels not through ideology but through personal freedom and pleasure. She presents the bodily instinct of revolt as opposed to Winston's intellectual rebellion. Her betrayal under torture highlights the futility of private resistance. O'Brien, he is a high-ranking member of the inner party who pretends to be part of the resistance. He serves as both tempter and the torturer. He symbolizes that party's intellectual control and the ability to rationalize cruelty and deny objectivity truth. Big Brother, the omnipresent god-like figurehead of the party, may or may not exist physically, but maybe he's not physically exist in the novel, but his image is everywhere, a symbol of total control and surveillance. He represents the state's power to dominate even thought and belief. Emmanuel Goldstein, the supposed leader of the resistance movement, the Brotherhood, is likely invented by the party to trap the dissenters. So his character symbolizes the idea of perpetual opposition used by the state to justify repression. Mr. Charrington, the kindly old shopkeeper who rents Winston a room, he later revealed as a member of the Thought Police. His betrayal underscores the theme that nothing private or sacred exists in the totalitarian state. Right? Now we'll discuss the themes of the novel. So the first theme is totalitarian and the power, right? So at its core, 1984, the novel is a study of absolute power. The party controls not only people's actions but also their thoughts, rewriting history and language to make rebellion impossible. Orwell shows how dictatorship can manipulate truth to maintain power, a warning that remains strikingly relevant today. The second theme is control of truth and history. So, if you will read the novel, you will go through a party slogan: Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. So, this is very, confusing line. But definitely, I am sure that you will get the idea, actual idea of the novel. Who controls the past, control the future. Who controls the present, controls the past, right? So this slogan, the party slogan, captures the novel's central concern, that is the manipulation of reality. So Winston's job is literally to erase and rewrite history, symbolizing how totalitarian regimes rewrite facts to control memory and identity, right? Surveillance and privacy. So every citizen is constantly watched by telescreens, microphones, and informants. So this phrase, Big Brother is watching you. There is a phrase in the novel, Big Brother is watching you, has become one of the most famous warnings in modern culture. So Orwell foresaw a society where surveillance technology could be used as a tool of oppression, something remarkably prophetic in today's digital age, right? The fourth theme is language and thought, the newspeak, right? So Orwell introduces the concept of newspeak, a reduced form of English designed to eliminate rebellious thoughts. For example, words like freedom or justice. So, words like freedom or justice are removed or redefined. So, people cannot even think of revolution. So, this idea reflects Orwell's belief that language shapes thought, a central point also explored in his essay Politics and the English Language, right? The fifth theme is psychological manipulation. So the party's goal is not merely to control behavior but to control the minds through doublethink, the acceptance of two contradictory beliefs at once. Citizens learn to suppress truth and logic, and they must believe lies such as war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. Right? The sixth theme is love and betrayal. So, the relationship between Winston and Julia represents the human desire for connection and freedom in an inhuman world, right? So, their eventual betrayal of each other under torture shows how totalitarian can even destroy the most intimate human emotions. The last theme of the novel is the individual versus the state. So Winston's struggle to remain human in a dehumanized society symbolizes the eternal conflict between individual conscience and political authority. So his defeat represents Orwell's fear that under modern tyranny, the individual might cease to exist altogether. Right? Now we'll discuss the symbols, which are very important actually. So the first is Big Brother. So this symbol, Big Brother, symbolizes totalitarian authority and surveillance. It represents how ideology replaces and personal morality and individuality. Telescreens. So it represents states' constant surveillance. They symbolize the invasion of privacy and destruction of freedom. The paperweight, Winston's fragile glass paperweight represents his desire to preserve a small and beautiful piece of the past. When it is shattered during his arrest, it symbolizes the destruction of his dreams and individuality. Room number 101. So this is the torture chamber in the Ministry of Love. It represents the ultimate psychological control where each prisoner faces his or her worst fear. So the worst fear of Winston is rats, right? So it's where love, loyalty, and selfhood are finally broken. The next symbol is red armed pole woman. So this is a symbol of hope and human resilience. Winston sees her singing while doing laundry and feels she represents a future where ordinary people may one day overthrow the party. The last symbol is rats. So it's Winston's greatest fear used to break his spirit in room number 101. It symbolizes dehumanization, fear, and the fragility of courage. So Orwell's 1984 is not merely a story, actually, it is a warning. Orwell wrote it to prevent the future he imagined. So basically 1984 1948 में लिखी गई थी. तो जब ये पब्लिश हुई तो इट्स वेरी ऑब्वियस कि ये नॉवल फ्यूचर पर्सपेक्टिव था ऑरवेल का, ये कि फ्यूचर ऐसा होगा. सो ही रॉट इट टू प्रिवेंट द फ्यूचर ही इमेजिन्ड. जो भी उन्होंने फ्यूचर इमेजिन किया उसको रोकने के लिए, उसे प्रिवेंट करने के लिए नॉवल लिखा उन्होंने. सो द नॉवल फोर्सेस रीडर्स टू कन्फ्रंट क्वेश्चन दैट दे आर स्टिल vital today. And the questions are: how much surveillance is too much? Can truth survive in an age of propaganda? And what happens when language itself becomes a weapon? So terms like big brother, doublethink, thought crime, Orwellian have entered our everyday language and proving that Orwell's fears were not fiction but prophecy. So George Orwell's 1984 remains one of the most powerful warnings ever written against the abuse of power and the manipulation of truth. So, through Winston's tragic struggle, Orwell exposes the ultimate danger of a world where the past is rewritten. कि ये बहुत ही dangerous world होता है जहाँ पे past को rewrite किया जाता है. मतलब जैसे मान लीजिए गवर्नमेंट ने कोई न्यू पॉलिसी लेकर आए हैं या कोई नया रूल बनाया है, तो उसको हिस्ट्री में रीराइट कर दिया जैसे वो तो शुरू से ही था. और यही जो ये नॉवल में जो पार्टी है, जो बिग ब्रदर जिसकी पार्टी है, वो ऐसा ही करता है. जब भी वो कोई नई पॉलिसी, कोई नया रूल बनाते हैं तो विंस्टन का काम होता है कि हिस्ट्री को चेंज कर दिया जाए और पुराने रिकॉर्ड्स में उसको इस तरह से मेंशन किया जाए कि ये तो पहले से ही हो रहा है, ताकि जो लोग हैं वो उस पर रिबेल नहीं करें, उसके अगेंस्ट नहीं जाए. सो दिस इज़ एक्चुअली वेरी fearful दैट कि आप हिस्ट्री रिराइट कर रहे हो. एंड मतलब विंस्टन ट्रेजिक स्ट्रगल, ओरवेल actually exposes the ultimate danger of a world where the past is rewritten and the present is controlled and the future belongs to the party, right? So even after decades, 1984 reminds us that freedom begins with the freedom to think and to say that 2 plus 2 make 4. तो फ्रीडम वहाँ मानी जाती है जहाँ पर हमें फ्रीडम हो सोचने की और ये कहने की 2 + 2 5 नहीं होता है, 2 + 2 4 ही होता है. तो ये कहने की हमें फ्रीडम हो, हमें अपनी मर्ज़ी से कुछ भी सोचने की फ्रीडम हो, तो वहाँ होती है फ्रीडम. तो इसी फ्रीडम के लिए जानना मतलब यही इच्छा है विंस्टन की. खैर वो पूरी नहीं हो पाती. सो जॉर्ज ऑरवेल की एक बहुत ही फेमस कोट है इस नॉवल से रिलेटेड: इफ़ लिबर्टी मीन्स एनीथिंग एट ऑल, इट मीन्स द राइट टू टेल पीपल वॉट दे डू नॉट वॉन्ट टू हियर. दिस इज़ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट एंड दिस इज़ वेरी डीप मीनिंगफुल, राइट? अब ये हो गया है, चलो हम करते हैं आंसर राइटिंग स्ट्रैटेजीज़ को पढ़ते हैं. देखिए, ऑल्दो आई हैव लॉट्स ऑफ क्वेश्चन फ्रॉम आवर प्रीवियस ईयर पेपर्स, but it's very hard for me to discuss each and every question here. So I have chosen the best 4 questions from those from the big list of the previous year questions. So these are actually, according to me, these are the best questions. These are classic high level literary analysis questions on George Orwell's 1984, which are suitable for your university exams and competitive literature papers. So I have chosen the four best and most representative questions that cover different aspects of novel like psychology, language, truth, and totalitarianism. And for each, we will craft a detailed answer writing strategy with how to structure the answer with key points and quotation, examiner focused high insights, and simple lines for introduction and conclusion. So the first question is: reflect on the effects of psychological manipulation on characters such as Winston and Julia in 1984. How do fear and indoctrination influence their relationships and self-perception? So this is a theme based analytical question. So it can be structured in 3 parts. पहला पार्ट होगा आपका साइकोलॉजिकल कंट्रोल, दूसरा होगा इम्पैक्ट ऑन कैरेक्टर्स, एंड द थर्ड इज़ कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस। तो पहले हमें साइकोलॉजिकल कंट्रोल की बात करनी है, साइकोलॉजिकल मैनिपुलेशन की बात करनी है, बाद में हमें बात करनी कि उसका क्या इम्पैक्ट पड़ा कैरेक्टर्स पर, सच एज विंस्टन एंड जूलिया। और उसके बाद हमें मतलब साइकोलॉजिकल कंट्रोल जो हुआ और उसका जो इम्पैक्ट पड़ा, उसका जो कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस क्या हुए, लॉस ऑफ सेल्फ एंड लव हुआ ना। सो सबसे पहले यू नीड टू राइट एन इंट्रोडक्शन with 2 or 3 lines, right? So introduction. So begin your answer with Orwell's idea of totalitarianism, totalitarianism as control not only of actions but of the mind. In 1984, Orwell reveals that the greatest weapon of the party is not physical violence but psychological domination, right? तो इंट्रोडक्शन लिखने के बाद जो मेन पार्ट है आपका, जो बॉडी ऑफ द आंसर है, इसमें आपको कुछ पॉइंट्स ऐड करने होंगे। द फर्स्ट इज fear as a tool of control. So the omnipresence of telescreens, the threat of vaporization, and the fear of room number 101 break the character's inner strength. When Winston's paranoia is here, he loved Big Brother in the end of the novel, shows psychological defeat, right? Second is indoctrination. So continuous exposure to propaganda, 2 minutes hate, slogans, newspeaks, erases individuality, right? And the third is impact on relationship. So विंस्टन और जूलिया का रिलेशनशिप था, उसको हमें यहाँ लिखना है। एज वी नो दैट देयर लव बिगिंस एज रेबेलियन बट एंड्स इन बिट्रायल, बोथ कन्फेसेस अगेंस्ट ईच अदर अंडर फियर। व्हेन विंस्टन वॉज इन रूम नंबर 101 और उसका जो ग्रेटेस्ट फियर था रैट्स, वो उसको उसके सामने आने वाले थे, मतलब उसको टॉर्चर करने के लिए, तो उसने एकदम कह दिया डू इट टू जूलिया नॉट मी। सो दिस इज विंस्टन्स फाइनल सरेंडर, राइट? दिस इज अबाउट their betrayal for each other, right? So यहाँ पर एक सेल्फ परसेप्शन की भी बात हम कर सकते हैं। सॉरी फॉर द हैंड राइटिंग अगेन। सो सेल्फ परसेप्शन में both of them lose identity, they become extensions of party ideology. So to conclude these points, you can conclude your answer that Orwell warns that psychological manipulation destroy the essence of humanity, love, which are love, loyalty and truth, right? So you can add some key lines for your exam purpose, like the party seeks power entirely for its own sake by making men deny their own thoughts, and fear not faith becomes the foundation of obedience, right? Chalo, I think this is sufficient for this answer for this question. Now we'll discuss the next question. Analyze the concept of newspeak in 1984. In what ways does the reduction of language serve the party's agenda, and how does this reflect Orwell's views on the connection between language, thought, and power? So this is a conceptual and philosophical question which connects Orwell's fiction Newspeak to his real world essay Politics and the English Language, which was published in 1946. So to begin your answer, you need to define Newspeak. तो इंट्रोडक्शन में आपको डिफाइन करना है क्या? Newspeak. So Newspeak, what is Newspeak? Newspeak is party's linguistic weapon designed to make thought crime impossible, right? तो इसको काफ़ी 3 से 4 लाइन्स एक्सप्लेन करने के बाद आपको लिखना है मेन पार्ट, उसमें आपको पर्पस बताना है, पर्पस ऑफ न्यूज़स्पीक। तो पर्पस क्या है न्यूज़स्पीक का? सबसे पहला पर्पस है कि इट रिड्यूसेस वोकैबुलरी, वोकैबुलरी क्यों कम करना चाहते हैं? क्योंकि जितने कम शब्द उतनी ही छोटी सोच। जब हम कहते हैं ना कि अगर आपको बहुत अच्छा बोलना है या बहुत अच्छा लिखना है तो अपनी वोकैबुलरी पे ध्यान दीजिए, बिकॉज मोर व्यू वर्ड्स मीन्स मोर थॉट्स. So the purpose of newspeak is to reduce vocabulary, because fewer words means fewer thoughts. And उसका जो दूसरा काम था, एक तो था vocabulary को रिड्यूस करना, दूसरा रिप्लेस करना. जैसे replacing bad with ungood, excellent with plus good, so that limits emotions and intellectual range. तो इसका पर्पस बड़ा ही अजीब है वैसे, कि वोकैबुलरी को कम कर दो ताकि थॉट्स अपने आप कम हो जाए, और वर्ड्स को रिप्लेस कर रहे, जैसे बैड नहीं बोल रहे किसी चीज़ को, अनगुड बोल रहे हैं, किसी चीज़ को एक्सलेंट नहीं बोलना है, उसे प्लस गुड बोलना है. तो मतलब गुड ही आपको आना चाहिए, अच्छा है तो प्लस गुड, बुरा है तो अनगुड. तो बैड और एक्सीलेंट नहीं बोलना पड़ेगा, तो यहाँ वोकैबुलरी आपकी कम हो गई. दूसरा क्या काम था इसका? सॉरी, एक तो आपने पर्पस लिखेंगे आप न्यूज़पेपर का, दूसरा आप लिखेंगे लैंग्वेज एज कंट्रोल. So Orwell believed that corrupt language produces corrupt thought, right? So Newspeak rewires thought by removing concepts like freedom और rebellion. तो यहाँ पर ऑरवेल भी सोचते हैं कि जो करप्ट लैंग्वेज है उससे करप्ट थॉट आती है, तो यहाँ पर ये लैंग्वेज को भी कंट्रोल करना चाहते हैं. पार्टी का एजेंडा यही है कि रिडक्शन करिए लैंग्वेज सर्व को, ताकि लोगों की सोच भी कम हो, वो भी ज़्यादा ग्रो नहीं करे. सो न्यूज स्पीक्स रीवायर्स थॉट बाय रिमूविंग कॉन्सेप्ट्स लाइक फ्रीडम और रिबिलियन. तो फ्रीडम और रिबिलियन तो इनकी डिक्शनरी से ही निकाल देंगे बिल्कुल. मतलब उनका ये एजेंडा है पार्टी का कि फ्रीडम क्या होती है, लिबरेशन क्या होती है, रिबिलियन क्या होता है, प्रोटेस्ट क्या होता है, इन्हें पता ही नहीं है, लोगों को पता ही नहीं है इस बारे में. सो because newspeak rewires thought by removing concepts like freedom, rebellion, liberation, protest, right? तीसरा पॉइंट यहाँ पे लिखेंगे आप political implications. So by 2050 the party plans to make thought crime linguistically impossible. जैसे इसमें एक लाइन भी है, इट्स अ ब्यूटिफुल थिंग द डिस्ट्रक्शन ऑफ वर्ड्स. सो मतलब इनका पॉलिटिकल इम्प्लीकेशन काफ़ी बड़ा है. द पार्टी प्लान्स टू मेक द थॉट क्राइम लिंग्विस्टिकली इम्पॉसिबल. नेक्स्ट इज reflection of Orwell's views. So language is equal to thought, thought is equal to freedom, and Orwell feared that real world political euphemism, the collateral damage, find a solution for the same reason, right? So by using these points and by explaining these points, you can conclude your answer that Newspeak demonstrates that controlling language is the most effective way to control minds and therefore power. So there's a line which you can use in your answer, that if thought corrupts language, language can also corrupt thought. So to destroy words is to destroy freedom, right? Now we'll go to question number 3. Analyze the concept of reality in 1984. In what ways does the party's manipulation of truth affect the character's perception of the society as a whole? So this question demands a philosophical and textual approach. So you need to explore Orwell's theme of subjective truth and totalitarian epistemology, which is control of knowledge. So सबसे पहले introduction. So in introduction, in Orwell's dystopia, reality itself becomes a political construct. So the party does not just rewrite history, actually it creates it that way as well, right? by discussing, you can begin your answer by discussing Orwell's dystopia, right? उसके बाद जो मेन पार्ट है, इसमें सबसे पहले होगा manipulation of facts, right? So the Ministry of Truth constantly revises newspapers, records, and photos, right? History becomes fluid. Oceania has always been at war at East Asia. So this is an example of how they manipulate the facts, how are they rewriting the past, right? तो मतलब पूरा जो रिकॉर्ड है, जो मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ ट्रूथ है, वो कॉन्स्टेंटली रिवाइज कर रही है रिकॉर्ड्स को, फोटोज़ को, इवन जो पुराने न्यूज़पेपर्स हैं ना, उनको भी ये कॉन्स्टेंटली रिवाइज कर रहे हैं, राइट? सो हिस्ट्री बिकम्स फ्लूइड, लाइक ओशिनिया हैज़ ऑलवेज बीन एट वॉर विद ईस्ट एशिया, जबकि ऐसा पहले नहीं था, वो तो अभी हुआ है वॉर तो, लेकिन इन्होंने पिछले न्यूज़पेपर्स तक में ये चीज़ बदल दी कि ये तो वॉर हो रहा था, शुरू से ही हो रहा था। इसका इफ़ेक्ट काफ़ी पड़ता है सोसाइटी पे, इफ़ेक्ट इन सोसाइटी। सो सिटीजन लिव इन डबल थिंक। अब क्या है कि ये मैनिपुलेशन कर रहे हैं फैक्ट्स के साथ, हिस्ट्री के साथ, रिकॉर्ड्स के साथ, फ़ोटोज़ के साथ, इवन न्यूज़पेपर के साथ भी लोग मतलब कर रहे हैं ना, मैनिपुलेशन कर रहे हैं। तो सिटीजन्स जो है यहाँ पर कंफ्यूज हो रहे हैं, वो डबल थिंक हो रहे हैं। और ये जो कॉन्ट्राडिक्टरी ट्रूथ्स ये जो पार्टी फैला रही है, इसको ये सच भी मान रहे हैं, जो सोसाइटी इसको सच मान रही है। सो दिस किल्स देयर रैशनैलिटी एंड देयर इंडिपेंडेंट थॉट एज वेल, क्योंकि वो उसी चीज़ को बिलीव कर रहे हैं आंख बंद करके जो ये पार्टी दिखा रही है कि पास्ट में भी सब चीज़ें थी, क्योंकि पास्ट तो सबने देखा, फ्यूचर किसी ने नहीं देखा है, लेकिन पास्ट तो सब जी कर आए हैं। बट स्टिल जो पास्ट वो जी कर आए हैं उसको भी वो नहीं मान रहे, वो मान रहे हैं जो पार्टी उनसे मनवाना चाह रही है, उनको फोर्सफुली या कैसे भी उनको मैनिपुलेट करके जो मनवाना चाह रही है। जैसे एग्जांपल के लिए जो जो हमारा प्रोटैगनिस्ट है वो कहता है ना कि ही लव्ड बिग ब्रदर, जबकि ऐसे तो नहीं था, ही लव्ड ओनली जूलिया, लेकिन वो कह देता है। तो क्योंकि इस जो ये पूरा जो सिस्टम है, इसने इसको उसको मैनिपुलेट किया है, उसको टॉर्चर किया है, उसे उसका डर दिखाया है। तो इस वजह से उसका माइंड जो है बिल्कुल, ब्रेन जो है उसका वॉश हो गया है, और उसके माइंड में सिर्फ वही चीज़ें हैं जो ये सिस्टम, जो ये पार्टी चाहती है, राइट? सो मिस मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ ट्रूथ constantly revises newspaper records and photos, and history becomes fluid by that, and civilizes citizens, the people in society live in double think. They believe there are contradictory truths, and this contradictory truths and this double thinking kill their rationality and independent thought. और इस चीज़ का इफ़ेक्ट पड़ता है विंस्टन पर भी, इफ़ेक्ट ऑन विंस्टन. So like he struggles to preserve memory and truth. Freedom is the freedom to say that 2 + 2 make 4. तो जब उसको टॉर्चर कर रहे होते हैं, उसको बुलवाते हैं कि बोलो 2 + 2 5 होता है, तो वो कहता है, वो काफ़ी एकदम से हार नहीं मानता, वो एकदम से स्ट्रगल जो उसका सरेंडर जो कर देता है वो लास्ट में, वो एकदम अचानक से नहीं कर देता, बड़ा टाइम लगता है उसको सरेंडर करने में। वो काफ़ी लंबे टाइम तक तो वो स्ट्रगल करता रहता है टू प्रिजर्व हिज मेमोरी एंड ट्रुथ। और वो कहता भी है कि फ्रीडम इज़ द फ्रीडम टू से दैट 2 + 2 make 4. So this is his quest for objective truth which defines his rebellion. But he got his final defeat, right? And under this inhumane torture, Winston accepts the party's version of reality, which is 2 + 2 5. And there is, we can see there is a destruction of truth, which is very equal to destruction of humanity, right? So to conclude these points, you can conclude your answer that Orwell shows that when truth becomes relative, tyranny becomes absolute, right? So reality exists in the human mind, and nowhere else. So this party was erased, and the eraser was forgotten, and the lie became the truth. Now we'll discuss the last question for today's class, which is Analyze the various methods through which the party maintains its totalitarian regime in 1984. How do these tactics serve to suppress individuality and dissent? So this is a comprehensive question and ideal for long answer format. तो ये वाला जो क्वेश्चन है ना, ये आई एम नॉट श्योर बट ये बड़ा ही क्वेश्चन है. ये आपका जो 20 मार्क्स का क्वेश्चन आता है ना, ये उसके लिए क्वेश्चन है ये. सो यू नीड टू अप्रोच इट सिस्टमैटिकली. Like you need to explain the every aspects of this situation, the political, psychological, technological and linguistic control. So first of all, in introduction, you need to define the scenario of the novel, the party's power in 1984, that is total, political, psychological and spiritual. So Orwell creates a model of totalitarian control to expose the mechanism of oppression. तो पूरा आपको सिनेरियो यहाँ पर अच्छे से एक्सप्लेन करना है और क्वेश्चन को ध्यान में रख के, सिर्फ अब समरी नहीं लिखनी है, क्वेश्चन को आपको ध्यान में रख कर आंसर को करना है. सो इन द मेन पार्ट, इन द बॉडी ऑफ द आंसर, you can add these things. The first is surveillance and टेक्नोलॉजी. सो आपने देखा कि इस नावल में एक टेली स्क्रीन्स है, ठीक है, और भी बहुत सारी चीज़ें, थॉट पुलिस है. सो वो सर्वेलेंस और टेक्नोलॉजी को रिप्रेजेंट कर रहा है. लाइक टेली स्क्रीन्स मॉनिटर्स एवरी मोमेंट, क्योंकि हर एक इंसान के पास पीछे एक टेली स्क्रीन है जो हर एक मूवमेंट को टेली स्क्रीन करती है. इवन जब विंस्टन और जूलिया अरेस्ट हो जाते हैं तब भी एक टेली स्क्रीन उनके पीछे होता है जो सब कुछ रिकॉर्ड कर रहा होता है, तभी तो वो पकड़े जाते हैं. सो टेली स्क्रीन मॉनिटर एवरी मोमेंट. और एक है थॉट पुलिस एनफोर्स कन्फर्मिटी, जैसे कांस्टेंट फियर जो है दैट डिस्ट्रॉय इंडिविजुअलिटी, तो यही काम है थॉट पुलिस का. सेकंड इज प्रोपेगेंडा. So you can write in your introduction that George Orwell's 1984 is chilling portrayal of a society where the government, known simply as the party, exercises absolute power over every aspect of human life, which is political, social, intellectual, and even emotional. The party's rule in Oceania is not sustained merely by the physical force but by the psychological control, linguistic manipulation, and technological surveillance. So, through these methods, Orwell demonstrates how totalitarianism can destroy individuality, silence dissent, and reshape human conscience itself. So, हमने ये डिस्कस किया, प्रोपेगेंडा किया, एंड दिस this leads to third feature which we can explain in the answer, we can include in an answer, that is the party hierarchy. So this is basically, इसमें बिग ब्रदर है, बिग ब्रदर सिम्बॉलिकली लीडर है, ओमनी प्रेजेंट इमेज है. इसमें एक इनर पार्टी भी है, दैट इज़ इलीट रूलिंग क्लास. एक आउटर पार्टी भी है, लाइक इसमें ब्यूरोक्रेट्स है लाइक विंस्टन, एंड प्रोल्स भी है दैट वर्किंग classes mass that kept uneducated and distracted by the trivial pleasure. So this structure prevents unity or rebellion. The pros, through numerically powerful, are politically powerless because they lack awareness. The party's central institutions reflect total control. The Ministry of Truth is mini-true that rewrites history. There is a Ministry of Love, that mini-love, that enforces loyalty through torture. There is a Ministry of Peace that conducts perpetual war, and the Ministry of Plenty that manages artificial storages. So the purpose is to create a political machine where the obedience is automatic and opposition is unthinkable, right? अब यहाँ पर हम दूसरा जो टॉपिक डिस्कस करेंगे वो होगा साइकोलॉजिकल कंट्रोल. about fear, indoctrination, and doublethink. Psychological control, fear, indoctrination, and doublethink. So citizens are constantly watched by telescreens and the thought police. Even फेशियल एक्सप्रेशन से भी आप मतलब ये अरेस्ट हो जाएंगे, फेस क्राइम जिसे कहते हैं ये लोग, मतलब फेस क्राइम कैन लीड टू अरेस्ट. सो फियर इंश्योर्स सेल्फ censorship. People suppress independent thoughts before the party must. So nothing was your own except the few cubic centimeters inside your skull. So however, that space is ultimately invaded. इंडोक्ट्रिनेशन की मैंने बात की थी यहाँ पर. सो एंड प्रोपेगेंडा की बात की थी. सो डेली रिचुअल्स लाइक द 2 minutes hate channel hatred towards enemies and reinforces devotion to big brother. The party replaces logic with emotion, ensuring blind loyalty, and the citizens are conditioned to repeat slogans that destroy rationality. And the slogan is war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. And there is a double think is the ability to hold the two contradictory beliefs simultaneously. And this is the psychological cornerstone of the party control. It allows citizens to accept falsehood without realizing their contradiction. जैसे कि यहाँ इसमें नॉवल में एक एग्जांपल है, द पार्टी रीराइट्स हिस्ट्री एंड द पीपल जेन्युइनली बिलीव्स इट. मैंने आपको पहले ही बताया कि हिस्ट्री तो सब जी चुके हैं, पास तो सब जी कर आए हैं, सबको पता है, फिर भी पार्टी जो है हिस्ट्री को, पास्ट को रीराइट करती है और जेन्युइनली लोग उसको बिलीव भी कर लेते हैं. एंड पार्टी क्लेम्स टू बी द बेनिवोलेंट वाइल इट टॉर्चर्स द सिटीजन्स. सो साइकोलॉजिकल manipulators ensures that truth and logic are replaced by submission and confusion. So individual thought become impossible. Right. थर्ड मैंने यहाँ पर एक चीज़ लिखी थी, टेक्नोलॉजी. So this will be our fifth point. Technological control. So that is surveillance and monitoring. So technology in 1984 is not liberating, it is enslaving. Every citizen lives under constant surveillance through telescreens, microphones and hidden information. Telescreens जो है वो मॉनिटर करता है एक्शंस और स्पीचेस को. इवन विस्पर्स आर अनसेफ, मतलब इंसान जो विस्पर भी नहीं कर सकते. वो टेलीस्क्रीन इतनी ज़्यादा शार्प टेक्नोलॉजी है कि आपकी विस्परिंग को भी पढ़ लेगा और आपको अरेस्ट भी करवा देगा. सो फोन्स हैं यहाँ पर, वो तो बल्कि पब्लिक और प्राइवेट स्पेसेस में हिडन है, स्पेशली इन द कंट्री साइड. मतलब आप शहर से बाहर जाकर भी अपनी मर्ज़ी का कुछ नहीं बोल सकते. एंड चिल्ड्रन को एज स्पाइज यूज़ किया जाता है, बच्चों को. सो इंडोक्ट्रिनेटेड थ्रू द स्पाइज एंड द यूथ लीग टू रिपोर्ट देयर पेरेंट्स. सो दिस टेक्नोलॉजी इंश्योर्स panopticism. People behave as though they are always being watched. एंड यहाँ पे एक लाइन भी ये होती है बार बार जो रिपीट होती है नॉवल में, बिग ब्रदर इज वॉचिंग यू. सो टू मेक सर्वेलेंस इंटरनल इंडिविजुअल्स पुलिस themselves when the state sees all privacy and therefore individuality ceases to exist. right. एक यहाँ पर एक और चीज़ ऐड होगी, linguistic control. So newspeak and the destruction of the language. So the party's invention of newspeak is Orwell's most original and frightening idea. It is a language designed to limit thought by reducing vocabulary and eliminating words associated with rebellion, freedom or emotion. सो जैसे बैड, मैंने आपको पिछले आंसर बताया था कि बैड को बैड नहीं कहना, अनगुड कहना है. वेरी गुड को प्लस गुड कहना है और एक्सीलेंट को डबल प्लस गुड कहना है. सो बाय रिमूविंग वर्ड्स पार्टी रिमूव्स द आइडिया. एट सिम द न्यूज़पेपर लेक्सिकोग्राफर, जिसका नाम है सिम, SYME, सिम, it proudly declares it's a beautiful thing, the destruction of words. So this linguistic engineering reflects Orwell's belief that language and thought are inseparable, and as seen also in his Essay Politics and the English Language, which was published in 1946. सो बेसिकली ये सारे कंट्रोल से ये क्या करने वाला है, मतलब ये जो पार्टी क्या करना चाहती है, ये करना चाहती है कंट्रोल ऑफ reality, right? So there's a manipulation of truth and history. The party rewrites history every day to maintain its illusion of infallibility. So Winston's job at the Ministry of Truth symbolizes this process. He alters records, destroys old newspapers, and recreates new version of reality, right? So no objective truth exists, only party truth is there, where the state defines reality, memory, and individuality vanish. So, to make people dependent on the party for their understanding of the world, a state of epistemic slavery. So, जब कंट्रोल ऑफ रियलिटी होगा तो फिर कंट्रोल ऑफ इमोशन भी हो जाएगा, which is about love, loyalty, and family. So, even love and relationships are manipulated by the family. The Junior Anti-Sex League, there's a league that promotes celibacy. Marriage is allowed only to produce children who are the children who are loyal to Big Brother. Family bonds are broken. Children spy on their parents or even. So Winston and Julia's love affair, which begins as a rebellion, is ultimately destroying the ministry of love. Both betray each other under fear in room number 101. So it proved that totalitarian can control can even crush human emotion, right? So it represents when loyalty to the party replaces all personal affection and dissent can't survive, right? So to use by using these points you can conclude your answer, though through a combination of fear, surveillance, language manipulation, propaganda, and torture, Orwell's party achieves the ultimate form of totalitarianism, one that does not merely control men but creates them by destroying individuality, erasing history, and manipulating truth. The party ensures that dissent is not only the crushed but rendered unthinkable. So, in the end, 1984 is a warning that the loss of freedom begins not with force but with the surrender of thought, right? So, this is all about for today's class. We have discussed a lot in this class. So to conclude this class, I can say that George Orwell's 1984 stands as the most powerful warnings ever written against the corruption of truth, the loss of individuality, and the dangers of absolute power. Through characters like Winston and Julia, Orwell shows how fear, propaganda, and psychological manipulation can destroy not just freedom but the very capacity to think. Each of the exam question we discussed, from Newspeak to Control the Reality, ultimately points to Orwell's central message that language, memory, and truth are foundations of human liberty. So, for students and scholars, effective answer writing on 1984 requires not only literary understanding but also critical reflection to connect Orwell's imagined world with the realities of political and social control in own time. So, more than 7 decades later, George Orwell's world still echo with urgency. Freedom is the freedom to say that 2 plus 2 make 4. If that is granted, all else follows. So let us therefore remember that the purpose of studying 1984 is not only to understand a novel, but to understand ourselves, our society, and the fragile nature of truth in every age, right? So thank you so much for being here in this class. If you find this class helpful and insightful, then please don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends and classmates, and subscribe to the channel for more such detailed and easy explanation of English literature. Thank you so much. Good night.